you all. It's wonderful to be in Housing Works, and they do such good works, and you can eat and drink and buy books and know that you're helping out. My name is, as Rachel said, is Jane Chabatore. I serve as president of the National Book Critics Circle. We're an organization of more than 600 critics that were founded 35 years ago at the Algonquin Round Table with the idea of expanding the critical conversation to a national level, which we have done. You can learn more about us on our website, www.bookcritics.org. First off, I want to welcome everyone and say congratulations to the 3 winners of this year's Pen Beyond Margins Award. Uwem Akpan for Say You're One of Them, published by Little Brown. Juan Felipe Herrera for Half of the World in Light, New and Selected Poems, published by the University of Arizona Press. And Lily Hoang for Changing, published by Fairy Tale Review Press. It's an honor to be here to celebrate their work and to take part in a conversation about crossing over, the pathway to critical and commercial success, and how they borrow from multiple genres to create works that are vital and engaging. We will also be welcoming Brendan Curry, an editor from W.W. Norton, for our conversation after their reading. Secondly, I'd like to mention that the National Book Critics Circle Awards, because the awards we've given in recent years exemplify the critical vision of our current work and how we see the world of literature today. Our recent winners include Roberto Bolaño for 2666, which is our fiction winner this year. Juan Felipe Herrera for the book Half the World in Light, who was our Poetry Award co-winner this year, and that's the work being honored tonight. Juno Diaz, last year's winner in fiction. Edwige Danticat, last year's winner in autobiography. Harriet Washington, last year's winner in nonfiction. Kieran Desai, the 2006 winner in fiction, and recent finalists Subi Alvarez, Chimamanda Adichie, Vikram Chandra, Hisham Matar, to just name a few. One more comment before we hear from this year's winners. I asked my friend, the poet, musician, playwright, and soon-to-be memoirist Joy Harjo what it meant for her to win a Pen Beyond Margins award. And here's what she said. For me, Pen has always conjured international integrity with the highest standards of literary quality, innovation, and justice. To be included as a Beyond Margins awardee made me a visible part of that community. As you know, Pan American Center, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award Sandroff Lifetime Achievement this year, is a U.S. branch of the world's oldest international literary and human rights organization. Pan American Center is comprised of 3,400 professional members who represent the most distinguished writers, translators, and editors in the United States. PEN also welcomes associate members who come from all parts of the literary community, booksellers, librarians, students, passionate readers, and they share PEN's ideals. This evening is sponsored, and the awards are sponsored by the Open Book Program. The Beyond Margins Award is one of the many ways in which the Open Book Program encourages racial and ethnic diversity within the literary and publishing communities. The Open Book Committee works to increase the literature by, for, and about African, Arab, Asian, Caribbean, Latin, and Native Americans, and to establish access for these groups to the publishing industry. Its goal is to ensure that those who are the custodians of language and literature are representative of the American people. Now, we're going to have brief readings tonight by this year's Beyond Margins Award winners, and their books are all available for you to continue to get a sense of what these wonderful works are like. Our first reader tonight is Uwem Akpan, who was born in southern Nigeria. After studying philosophy and English at Creighton and Gonzaga universities, he studied theology for 3 years at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. He was ordained as a Jesuit priest in 2003 and received his MFA in creative writing from the University of Michigan in 2006. Say You're One of Them was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Art Seidenbaum Awards for First Fiction and the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. The collection was also nominated for the Guardian First Book Award, the Kane Prize for African Writing, and the Story Prize. It received the Commonwealth Writers Prize for Best First Book, African Region, and was chosen by Oprah Winfrey as a 2009 selection for Oprah's Book Club. We have our first reader.
I'm very happy to be here. It's my second time in this place. Thank you, Jane, for the beautiful introduction. I want to say thank you too to all those who have put this together. And then to acknowledge the presence of my agent, Maria, and my friend Maza, and many other people I'm seeing here whom I know, whose names I don't really remember, and I remember after this. Again, thanks for coming. In my place, our story is not complete until you have told it to someone. Otherwise, it's something in your head. So that you could brave this not so good weather to be here, I'm grateful. I'm going to read you two brief passages. The first one is going to be from the story, My Parents' Bedroom, set in Rwanda. I'm passionate about this passage. Part of it is I've never been to Rwanda before, and I struggled very hard to get these details to make it sound real. When I was younger, I used to ride into the hills on Papa's wide shoulders. We were always visiting my mother's family's place in the next valley. Papa told me that when he first met my mother, she was my age, and they played together in these hills. They went to the same primary school and university. In the hills, you can see the clouds moving away like incense in a church. Our country is full of winds, and in the hills, they blow at your eyes until tears stain your cheeks. They suck through the valleys like hungry cows. The birds rise and tumble and swing, their voices mixing with the winds. When Papa laughs his jolly, jolly laugh, the winds carry his voice too. From the top of the hills, you can see that the earth is red. You can see the stands of banana and plantain trees, their middle leaves rolled up like yellow-green swords slicing the wind. You can see fields of coffee, with farmers wading through them, piggybacking their baskets. When you climb the hills in the dry season, your feet are powdered with dust. And when it rains, the red earth runs like blood under a green skin. There are tendrils everywhere, and insects come out of the soil. The second passage is from one of my novellas in this collection, Luxurious Hearses. The story is about this Muslim Christian or Christian Muslim boy who was baptized Catholic in the South. At the very tender age of 3 or 4, he went over to the North and became a Muslim. He gave everything to the religion. He really believed in Islam. And when he stole something, they wanted to cut off his hand. He could have protested by going to the common law court. But since he accepted his faith, he allowed Sharia to take its course. So his hand was cut off. Even before then, at the age of 15 or so, his elder brother, who was much older when they transferred to the North, couldn't convert to Islam and went back to the South actually to become this firebrand Christian, and came to the North, a very Muslim enclave, to convert the people, to proselytize. Now when you do that in these very Muslim countries, they'll kill you. Sometimes it's honor killing. Your family will have to do it. Jubril, the brother, accepted that he should be killed. He did not partake in stoning the brother, but deep within him, it felt like the thing to do. Now, he had to flee to the South because even the Northerners, in the heat of this crisis, religious crisis, were telling him, you don't belong here. You were a Christian. You were once baptized. And he couldn't convince them that he had sacrificed all this to be one of them. So he's actually stuck in a bus going south with Christians, and he has to hide, the stump. knowing that if that came out, they would know he's Muslim and go after him. So this passage talks about the night before his hand was cut off. Up until that last night, he had been brave about it and actually walked around anticipating the event with gay abandon. A boy completely at peace with a just punishment. A sort of hero in his neighborhood. As far as he was concerned, the hand was dead. He absolutely believed that once the hand was cut off, he and others would be discouraged from stealing again. He ignored the hand and tried not to look at it and looked forward to being relieved of this source of self-hate. Jubril started using his left hand only. And just to make sure he did not mistakenly use the fingers or palm of the condemned hand, the right hand, he tied a red rubber band around the wrist as a reminder, as if to delineate a clear line between good and evil, love and hate. With this sort of clarity, he felt comfortable using his right elbow, for it was a part of the body he had not forfeited to theft. 2 nights before the amputation, he had slept peacefully and even happily dreamt of the hand being cut. But that last night, alone in the room, he lay awake. While he still accepted that his hand should be cut off and prayed loud and clear that Allah's will be done, he found himself many times, to his embarrassment, shaking hands with himself in the dark. He performed many types of handshakes and even pretended to shake hands with another person. For the last time, he used his right hand to feel the different parts of his body. He stood up and wandered around the cell, feeling the wall and the floor. He moved his fingers among themselves like a flutist or a guitarist. He said goodbye to that part of him he had already sacrificed to death, knowing that when day broke, he would be wafted away by anesthesia. Thank you.
Thank you, that's very powerful. I'm holding my right hand at the moment, sort of touching it, make sure. Okay. Juan Felipe Herrera is a Chicano poet born in Fowler, California. In addition to his 24 previously published books, his recent books are Half of the World in Light, New and Selected Poems, the award winner tonight, and one of the New York Times best books of 2008, and a 2000 Latino International Award in Poetry, and also 187 Reasons Mexicanos Can't Cross the Border on Documents, published by City Lights, which won the 2008 Penn Oakland Josephine Miles National Poetry Award. So, some poetry now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Uwem, for your lovely words and stories. And Jane, for everything. For the introduction, for all the work you've been doing all these years. Muchas gracias. And everyone else, Lily and Allison Day, who has been editing my books for HarperCollins, and the rest of you, and everybody here in Penn, and all the beautiful work. I was just thinking of sitting down right now, that the real poem, really, the real poem has already taken place, and which is you. Because all the energy, all the inspiration, your presence is what makes this poetry come alive. Thank you so much. And the students that I just met, they were just beautiful. Kenley Galvez and the team. Kenley Galvez and the team. Is Kenley around? Are you around, Kenley? Oh, they're just beautiful. Louder? Louder on this? Louder on the microphone? Yeah. How's this? Louder. Okay, I'll project louder. Okay, Dave, thank you. Thank you so much. So they're not here? They're not here? So what's going on, you know? This is a piece. I was traveling. I traveled quite a bit, and you know that time when we were all interested in finding ourselves and just going out of ourselves to find ourselves. So at this point, I was in northern New Mexico back in early '70s, and I was very interested in the small towns. And coming back in many ways to myself and kind of hanging out with the peoples in Nuevo Mexico, New Mexico. My father spent many years in Nuevo Mexico. This part of this is in Spanish, and I'll see what I can do. It'll come through somehow. I'll see what I can do. Los chapulines verdes vuelan. The green grasshoppers fly. And this comes from talking with a viejito, from one of the elders in one of the small northern towns. I want to see if I can get into these lines. I haven't read this ever. Los chapulines verdes vuelan. El grillo toca su acordeón, raspan sus cantos en el adobe. Los campos brillan, la paja está cortada, los pinos crecen alto, el cedro y el piñón se mecen, corre el agua del ojo viejo y la mariposa y el cuervo beben el sol y rajan el viento. Fíjese, Señor, que antes era como si fuéramos bendecidos por Dios. Se te caía una semilla y crecía una flor. Los indios y nosotros teníamos fiesta juntos. Bajábamos al río y cogíamos pescado. The green grasshoppers used to fly. The cricket would play the accordion, and their songs would break through the adobe. And the fields, they would glow, and the straw was cut, and the pine trees would grow so high, and the cedar and the pinyon would sway. And like the water of that old well, the butterfly and the crow would drink the sun, and it would slice the wind. And imagine, Senor, it was that way back in the old days, as if we were blessed by the gods, by God. And a seed would fall from your hand, and a flower would emerge in the Indian, and all of us, we had a fiesta together. And we'd come down the river, and we would pick up the fish. That's Johnny Marin. And John Marin was a great inspiration in my life. He published one of my early books, Face Games, and we used to hang out and blow and smoke black cigars from Veracruz. Beautiful cigars from there. And he still is an amazing friend. Children of Space. This is kind of the other side of that first piece. On Valencia Street, the playground aches. Children float through parking lots, riddled with the screams of distant throats. Daughter hands toss a toy over the clouds. Invisible. The mother in apartment G gazes, not inhaling. The father coils the fingers around transparent shoulders in the air. Slowly they undress. Only the stains of the assassinations remain on their bodies. They do not speak now. They cannot speak. Willingly they have cut something inside. Vowels bleed across the streets. They enter windows. They exit through small openings. Even their bones are changing. Soon they will be unable to walk. The two will end in a stance, nude, one pressed against the toilet towel rack, the mirror speckled with images of rapid hands wet. The other hits the fist against the living room wall. Please, me, leave me. In the sunlight, the children rotate in soundless collisions beyond the rented structures into an infinite system of undecipherable signs. In my last love letter, you know, well, I gave you everything. Nothing was left untouched. My deepest secrets, if only I could repeat them once more. I opened up my shirt, this rivet board you called my manhood. In one crazed second, I threw it all away and knelt at your feet by the shore. The ocean pulled me back. I wanted to walk with you and for once see you as you see me. Touch you as you touch me. I was ready to listen by your side. Our shadows would melt into the other. They would die and a new form would float along the wind sands. Two as one and one as two. The different two would flower. The enigma pouring down from the sky would unravel. The blueness of the waters also would break into ice, glass, lines on my hands. Everything I had known disappearing before me. Yes, it was me without you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And our final reader is Lily Huang, whose first book, Parabola, won the Chiasmus Press Undoing the Novel contest in 2008. She's also the author of the forthcoming novels The Evolutionary Revolution from Le Fig Press and Invisible Women from Stepsister Press 2010. She also is associate editor of Star Trek Books and editor of Harpoon Press. Lily.
Thank you, Jane, for your lovely introduction, and thank you to Nick and Penn and everyone for coming out tonight. My book, Changing, is a translation of the I Ching, or the Chinese Book of Changes, and it takes the form of the hexagram, so there's 64 chapters. I don't speak Chinese, and I am not Chinese, and so this translation is a very rough translation, shall we say. So, but when you get the book, you'll see that each page takes the form of a hexagram. And the titles are all from the original, and that was one of the constraints that I used for this book. 1, creation. Father used to be a painter and a creator, and Father used to make so many things. And I am told that before his hair shined white, he was a painter in the country of heat. And loving my mother, he gave up oils for numbers, and Father became a mathematician for my mother, and for my mother migrating from the country of heat to here. And Father unable to form words, and Father bowing his head and cleaning other people's shit, and decades later he retired and began to paint, enjoy, and then to stroke. A brief explanation. You, reader, see 6 lines, some whole, some broken, and these are divided into top 3, bottom 3, making patterns to represent heaven, swamp, fire, thunder, wind, water, mountain, and earth. And these 2 stacks of 3 lines make a hexagram, and I am not the originator of this the ever-changing book of changes, having changed fates for centuries, having changed faces just as many times, and I am just another translator to offer you a new story. Us lovers, we have created for ourselves our own history, and you, lover, sometimes I just look at you and I'm enamored all over again, and you, lover, sometimes you see me staring a fool, and you, lover, you become annoyed, and you say, why do you have to look at me that way? And I say, do you remember that time you touched me? And I say, it was like that time I was stung by a bee, and my throat was a fist, and I couldn't breathe, and they shot me full of adrenaline, and I thought I would die. To begin at the beginning, you must start at the bottom and move upwards, just like the American dream, just like Father has told me so many times, that our people were not like other people, that we must bow our heads, but our people were more diligent than others, that we endure pain better than others. We have an entire history of repression, no oppression, but we're here now in the land of possibilities, so we must start at the bottom and work our way up, just like these hexagrams do. In the city of heat, I was made in the city of heat from the heat and the sweat of mother and father, and they had tried, and mother had lost others before me, and I was some sort of miracle. And still, when I came out of mother's body into all that heat, I came out of her body a girl. That mother would not look at me for days, and father, seeing a girl, he left the hospital. And he didn't come back until mother was to go home alone, and they didn't come back for me for months. This is a story about Jack and Jill, and let me be clear without confusion that it's true that Jack and Jill go up the hill, but Jack isn't always Jack, and Jill isn't always Jill, and I am not always me, and you, lover, you are not always you. But sometimes Jack is Jack, and Jill is Jill, and I am I, and you are you, but the family isn't really a family at all. And they're certainly not my family. They're all made up, but sometimes Jack is Jack is Jack. And I don't want you, lover, to be confused, so I'm clarifying it now. '47, oppression. Translator translating, and I'm so tired of translating this changing book, and it's a task much larger than me, and I'm worried I'll miss words, and I'm worried I'm neither a good storyteller nor a real honest teller of fakes. You, lover, you're worried you oppress me, and I tell you, lover, you don't. That, lover, I'm just tired, and I need to rest, and then maybe, then I will be ready to defend myself, lover, but I'm tired of always defending. Brother, big brother, sitting in his house immaculate without one particle of speck tainting, and brother, big brother, with his partner, and his partner, he can't sit on the sofa. And brother, big brother, thinks the sofa is for looking, and his partner has a special chair he's allowed to sit in. And when I visit brother, big brother's house, sometimes I can sit on the sofa, but mainly I stand and we watch news in silence, and brother, big brother, displays for me new things for his untouchable house. I will give you what the translator says. I'll tell you exactly what he says. Oppression, success, perseverance. The great man brings about good fortune, no blame. When one has something to say, it is not to be believed. Little girl listening to her father, and her father saying how their family is different looking, and people who are different looking, they're shat on, and no one respects them. And because of this, little girl needs to work extra hard and be extra smart, or else people will always make fun of her because she looks different, because her people aren't white, and little girl believing it and working hard, and little girl going to school and opening her little eyes extra wide to look like white kids foolish. Mother going to treatment and then to work and then to home, and mother working here, cooking food for us, her family, and mother somehow not complaining, and mother sometimes running to the bathroom 20 times over dinner without exaggeration, And I, her daughter, I want to love her and hold her, and she is delicate, and she being incredibly powerful. And it's the guilt of mother's pain that keeps me calling every day. And only today, mother telling me with honesty how terrible the pain it was. Jack feeling a little guilty, and Jack thinking maybe he should go back and help Jill, but Jack's playing in the sky with gods, and Jack looking down and seeing Jill struggling, and Jack suddenly, with thick swamp, feeling bad. Jill splashing her fingers in a pool from the bucket, and Jill, she thinks maybe she's broken a whole bunch of bones, and Jill hurting pretty bad, and with her little voice calling out to Jack or Prince Charming or anyone at all. 58, open. Water over water, there's so much water, and don't you know, reader, that water symbolizes rebirth? And so here, so close to the end on this, so here, so close to the end, this is your opportunity for rebirth. Here is the junction, the crossroad. You can open new doors, and there is nothing you can't do, reader. Your future is open. And isn't this what you've been looking for all along, reader? Isn't this the fate you've been yearning to hear? And isn't this just the kind of future you want? One of golden opportunities and futures bright? The day little girl ran into the ocean, and the ocean opened itself to little girl and made for her a little path to walk through. And she thought it would lead her to treasure. She thought she'd found a magic map that would lead to the center of the world. And so little girl, she went into the ocean full of surge and passion, and the day the little girl ran into the ocean, it did not really open itself for her. No, it led her to all that electricity and humility and pain, and she regrets it to this day, our little girl does. 4 years ago, doctors removed inches of mother's colon and took away that poison. And still there's poison in her body, and still there is pain, and how many times must mother's body be opened before she's fully well again? You, lover, what big eyes you have, and yet sometimes, lover, when you are stressed, your eyes open larger, and one of them wanders away from me, and off somewhere else, and maybe somewhere where we are happy once again. The truth of it is that mother has been in remission from cancer for a year now, but still she suffers. And now the high blood pressure, and now the stress from sister, big sister, and the truth of it is that father should have no stress in his life now that he's had 2 strokes we can count, and so many more he has never said. But the truth of it is that now that they are old, sister, big sister has returned, and now the turmoil all over again, because now she's all alone and all kinds of worried for them. And Jill, not knowing any better, opened the knocking door, and Jack came in a suit of fur, and Jill said, "What do you want, Jack?" And Jack said, "Oh, what pretty eyes you have." And Jill said, "What are you talking about?" And Jack said, "See what big eyes I have." And Jack said, better to see you with, my pretty." And Jack said, "See what big teeth I have." And Jill said, "Better to eat me with, my darling." And she opened her mouth and ate him up whole. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We're going to have a quick moment where our readers are going to stand up and take their seats at the table. And I'm going to recommend that everyone give them a great round of applause, all 3 of them. For bringing their voices to us tonight. And you guys are going to move up here to the table. Brendan Curry is going to join them. Brendan, you're going to be right here at this end. And the others are going to take the seat where their name is. So you've got to go around there. All right. Terrific. We're going to have a conversation now. The sort of formal part is behind us. And I'm going to ask each of the 3 of the Beyond Margins winners to talk a little bit about the journey of the book that we've just heard them read from. What has been the publishing process? What has been the role played by champions for the book in getting it published, getting it reviewed, getting it higher honors? And we can go alphabetically again. Why don't we do that? So Lily can take a breath, and we're going to start. You'll be last again, and we'll have Uwem first, and then Juan, and then we'll swap it around the next time. So each of the 3 of you, the journey of your book, please.
For me, it's a long journey. I am from the village of Ikotokbaneda in southeastern Nigeria. I grew up hearing folk tales, elders in the village, my parents. I love stories. When I was growing up in Nigeria, you couldn't go to primary school until you were 6. So you basically played, listened to stories, made your own toys. I was born after the war, so there was peace and a lot of food, especially around Christmas time. And all I remember is a very good childhood. Now, out of this storytelling and all, I like stories, and I never knew I could write stories. I always knew I could tell stories. And as you all know, it's, telling stories is different from writing stories. So it was only 10 years ago, my work, my essays had been rejected by a newspaper in Nigeria. And in that pain of rejection and depression, I saw that they published short stories on Saturdays. So I decided to try. So I discovered I had the gift to write fiction. What to do with this gift? I pushed very hard to develop on my own for 4 years or so. And the bulk of this book was written in those 4 years. I had nobody to show this to, because most of our successful African writers live out here in the US and in Europe because the conditions are better and you can actually work in a more stable environment. I went to the University of Michigan. Before that, I submitted one of my stories, An Xmas Feast, twice to the New Yorker, and they rejected it twice. Back then I did not know the New Yorker was this big thing in America. If I knew, there's no way I would have even tried. So that was my good fortune. It is ignorance. And I was writing in the seminary. So I wasn't mixing with other writers and going to conferences, which is why I'm always happy to meet writers. Like I've met these 2 writers now, and thank you for your work. And you in the publishing industry, I could have given my right hand to meet you in those days. Anyway, I got to Michigan and learned a lot. It's not every aspiring writer that should go to writing school. Some people can just write, just like some people play music or sing. Others need to go to music school, and I'm one of those who felt I needed to go to writing school. I needed to make I knew my story could be better, and writing school really helped me. It was in my first year, between first year and second year in writing school, that story that had been rejected twice got accepted in the New Yorker.
All right.
Thank you very much. It had changed a lot because I had rewritten it a lot. But I did not know how big that was. So until I came back from the summer and my classmates and teachers had a party for me. My classmates had a party for me to celebrate that. And then 4 publishers approached me, and I stalled for 1 year because I did not know what I was getting into. In my place, they say if you go to a new place, stand with 1 foot in case it's a grave. So I wanted to be very sure. They were telling me we would publish this 1 story and whatever else you have. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that yet. and I approached my agent, Maria. I felt she's the one I could work with, but again, I stalled for like 9 months before. Maria, I'm sorry about that. You know, before it was clear within me that these were the things I needed to, you know, to do. The following year, my second story, my parents' bedroom, also appeared in the New Yorker. These two stories appeared in the special edition. At that point, I had some certainty, so I hired my agent, who had this auction in New York to which 12 publishers came, and she organized two in Italy and Britain, and during those months, I ran back to Nigeria to hide. So the New Yorker really helped me because I got a sense that I had no clue where I had walked into. So Cressida Lejeune, God bless you, she said to me, "Uwem, I will help you, don't panic. You know, your work is very good. You'll get used to this world of publishing. If you have any questions, let us know." And she would call me to say, "How is it going right now? You know, are you okay? You know, what agents should we be looking at? How are your publishers treating you?" So they have really supported me, and also my teachers at Michigan, and my friends and family, you know, members. I sold the book. Took 2 years before it could come out, you know, in this form. When we talk about champions, I cannot but also remember the part played by people I met doing research. I speak only one African language, and in my country there are up to 250. And yet I have been able to find people who believed in me, very poor people, and said, "Father, we will translate this patois for you. We will tell you a bit about our culture that would help you in this work. We believe in what you are doing." And then the book came out. It's a very exciting thing to have the book. And the book is like a child. It starts to grow. Sometimes it punches you, sometimes it scratches you in the face, but it's your child. It's your sweet child. So I did the book tours. Penn invited me. The awards started coming. By the way, Penn, I'm very happy to come here knowing that I've won the award. You go to many of these award ceremonies, you're not sure you will win, and then at the end, you don't win. And though you enjoy the wine and the crackers, man, it's not that easy. So, wow. Anyway, I work in a parish in Nigeria. My parish has 15,000 parishioners. We are 3 priests. It's a very busy place. I love to be a priest. You're dealing with real characters, not people you make up and, you know, mess with their life the way you want. Now, I was still at my parish one evening when Oprah Winfrey called. And I pinched myself and I felt the pain, so I suspected it was real. It's humbling, it's amazing, it's incredible. What else can I say? I'm very thankful to God. And since you, my dear Americans, you know who Oprah is, I wouldn't bop you with the details. Thank you. God bless.
The New Yorker in your journey. It was 2 steps forward, or 2 steps back, 1 step forward. Yeah, lovely. Juan.
The journey of the book?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a clown journey. It's kind of like a clown journey, only because I never had a writing model. You know, I never had. I don't have any brothers or sisters, and I grew up in a handmade trailer that my dad made at the age of around 68, and I was born when he was 66. And he did everything by hand. He's a handman, a farmer, a laborer. One time I looked at his, he had to fill something out. What do you do? You know, what's your occupation? He put laborer. And he would always have laborer in there. And that's what he did. He was born in 1882. And I was born when he was 66. And I was born in an improvised family. Not the official family, but in the other family. The illegal family. The illegitimate family. So then I had to kind of make things up. I would look at the city across the tracks and across the dust, and on this side of the side of town. So there's a town, and there's this side of town, and then there's the outside of this side of the center of town. So I was kind of out there, literally, chasing bugs and tadpoles, and living in makeshift trailers, like the one my dad made, and he built it on top of a car he found. He said, what are you doing? And my mother said, ¿Qué está haciendo, Felipe? What are you doing? So I'm building a house on top of a car. So why are you doing that, Felipe? And what's going on? Well, this way we can travel at the same time. Al mismo tiempo. So that's what I mean. And it was all like just slapped together, and here's a door, and let's go. And he I don't know where he got a World War II Army green truck, but he got it. It was a big old giant grilled truck, Army truck. So that was a truck that pulled the house on top of a car. So we could travel, go places. And we even used to go to El Perro for entertainment every night. The dog. We went to El Perro. Vamos al Perro. And that meant we were going to go from. What do you think the Perro is? We're going to go to the Perro tonight. What? We're going to see a movie there? No, vamos al Perro. How about a burger, puppy? No, vamos al Perro. What do you think that Perro was?
Dog races?
The Greyhound bus station. Because there you can sit down and watch people go places. And you could play with the little machines, and you could jump in the photo booth and make faces for 25 cents. Wait outside and get a little film strip. Remember the little film strips? All stained up and, you know, making faces. And if you really were cool, you could go to the little diner and have apple pie a la mode. So we could jump out like 3 class levels by just walking up to the diner. Here's what would you like? Apple pie a la mode. Mira, apple pie a la mode. So I had to kind of invent everything. And I used to see people on stage, like in middle school. And I never used to talk because I got slapped and hit for talking in Spanish. That's the only language I knew. Pero yo pienso, pa. Yo opino, pa. Yo me llamo, pa. So then I shut myself up. But I still used to see people speaking, and it looked really cool. And I used to see them performing, that even looked better. So I forced myself to be a performer in middle school. And then I joined, I created theater groups in the university. And because those were the 60s, that was a very hot political moment. So then I became part of many political street theaters. So then I found myself performing for farm workers and for students and for prisoners and for all over the United States. Doing my thing, you know, with all kinds of stuff on, you know, actors, and we created our own texts. Traveling theater, Mexico, you know, met theaters from South America, Latin America, and Central America. And that's where my poetry was bubbling up all the time. So to come to the book, and we created our own books, our own newspapers, right? Our own newspapers, our own leaflets, our own flyers. We jumped in vans and used trombones and come to a theater tonight. We have a piece against the Vietnam War, and you know, Obama's president now. And so that's where that's where I was writing from and for. So that's what these early pieces represent in this book. And then meeting people like John Marin, who's here tonight in the mid-'80s, and many other brothers and sisters earlier on that said, hey, you know, I got a small press. I heard you read and perform. Let's put some of the work together and let's work together. And then meeting some of my pals in the university at Stanford, like Francisco Alarcón, who knew all about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. They would tell me all about the narratological structures of his books. I go, how does that go again? How does that go again? Because I was building my little house on top of a car so I could go somewhere. Because I wasn't taking those courses, I was in anthropology. Because I thought I wanted to know about culture. That was kind of okay. And then I would talk to friends like Victor Martinez, who would tell me about Paul Celan and Miklo Fornotti. And I go, oh yeah, take some notes. And people like David Henderson, who's in the back row here tonight, I haven't seen him in quite a while, would tell me about the Black Arts movement in New York. So I'd take some notes. So that's how it happened, Jane. That's how my poetics came together for me. And then finally, I was, you know, finally I got into a workshop. I said, what's going on in here? Is this what you're doing? Oh, come on, you gotta be kidding. This is cool. That's how it happens.
So I'm not supposed to be a writer. I'm supposed to be a doctor. And I didn't actually fail at being a doctor. I just never tried to be a doctor. My parents, to this day, I was telling these guys earlier that my parents to this day will call me and ask if perhaps I would like to go to dental school. And a lot of Vietnamese immigrants, when they come over, there's this big idea of the American dream, and the American dream is fully realized when your children become doctors. And so I tried to get around it by choosing something else like law school, and I didn't really want to do that. And eventually I came to writing. But as a child, because my brother and sister are so much older than me, my brother's 12 years older than me, my sister's 13 years older than me, I was left alone a lot. And so what I did was I would gather all of the other little Vietnamese kids together and I would gossip. And I would tell these really, really elaborate stories that were all very true about all of my parents' friends and anybody really that I could come in contact with. And I would just tell these stories, and so eventually people stopped talking around me. And so then I played with marbles, but that's a whole different story. I actually started writing in college because my college roommate was a poet, and I thought she was really cool. And I wanted to be like her, and all the boys thought she was hot. And I was like, well, if it works for her, it'll work for me. But I was a really horrible poet. And then I discovered fiction writing, and I found that I was okay at that. So this book, Changing, came because I did my MFA at the University of Notre Dame, and my last semester there, I had written a huge master's thesis, which was Parabola, my first book, and my professor said that I couldn't recycle work from my thesis. And so almost out of spite, I wrote this book. And my first book, Parabola, explores what I call modern day mythologies, such as IQ, personality tests, psychology, religion, love, all of these things. And among the things that I researched was the I Ching. And I had all of this research done on it, and I didn't know what to do, so I started writing this book. And I was very fortunate when I graduated. My first book won a first book contest a couple months after I graduated, and then I submitted Changing to one small press, and they rejected it. But my editor, who serves as editor at this other press as well, emailed me, I think about anywhere from a day to a week after I got my rejection letter, and offered to publish this book. She said, you know, Lily, I've got this really small press, I just started it, I'm republishing Joy Williams's second novel, and I would really love to publish this. And I have so much love for Kate Bernheimer and everything that she's done. Fairy Tale Review Presses is a great press, and she's just a fantastic editor.
Terrific. Aren't those great stories? The award winners tonight, their books are on the table, but they're such great stories. I'm going to ask Brandon now. He's been so quiet and careful and thoughtful, and he's been listening to the readings, and he's been listening to the stories. Brandon is an editor. He's got a lot of really important things to deal with in the world to be an editor, because work is coming to him all the time, and he has to make decisions about it. So I'm going to ask him to give some perspective on the path toward publication that he knows better than a lot of editors. I've been told by some people at Norton that he's especially gifted about the necessary transition that can be made for adapting to the web and online to sell books, and that he's superb at getting review attention. Now, I also understand he came out of a marketing background, and he's worked with Bob Weil at Norton when Weil was publishing Charles Ogletree of Harvard and Skip Gates. And he says that it would be interesting to have you tell us about some of the ways in which you are thinking about crossing borders for writers of color when you're publishing them. And thank you for being here tonight. We're real happy to have you. You're the editor of the table.
Yeah, no, that was mostly lies.
Right.
But, so I was on the train. I was on the train the other day, and I was thinking about this panel and worrying about this panel mostly. And they have these little trains of thought, you know, those little snippets of things, right? And so I look up, and I'm thinking about this panel, and it says, every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. And it's that curmudgeon Schopenhauer. And I thought, how true, and yet in so many ways, the stories that we just heard defy that entire statement. And I think that's the magical thing about publishing, is that paths to publication are curiously irregular. They're haphazard, and they're a lot about the passion that editors and agents have for hearing something that's not like them or about them, and trusting that there's a readership for things that are not about them or like them. So it did occur to me that as I was thinking about this panel, I'm a middle-class white dude from the suburbs, and so I wouldn't call myself exactly beyond margins in a lot of ways. But I think that's what animates publishing is, that it's maybe a bunch of middle-class white folks who are curious about the world, and I think that that curiosity is what makes these books happen. What else am I supposed to talk about, Jane? Is that good?
Well, getting review attention.
Oh, yeah.
Getting the
reviews
word
and
out
stuff.
online.
Oh, word online.
Thinking of ways that, okay, the book's in print. How are you going to get the word out?
Well,
How are you going to get readers for the book, and how are you going to get the book reviewed, and possibly even nominated for an award that might win?
Well, no, that's a good point. All those things, it's a lot to talk about, but what I will say is that it starts before the book is in print. Actually, much of the groundwork for successful award nominations, reviews, all that kind of stuff has to happen before the book is between covers. We normally allot somewhere between 10 and 11 months, if we're lucky, before a book launches, because the Atlantic Monthly decides 6 months before they go to press what they're going to review and who they're going to assign it to. So I think that it's important to think about the fact that the process itself takes a long time, and you're getting rejected by the New Yorker twice, and then accepted, and then suddenly there's interest in the project. But I think that what's happening right now in the reviewing space is that the best way to describe it is that one of our marketing managers describes it as the people who used to get paid to tell you what to care about no longer get paid to tell you what to care about. And so this idea of a mass review culture, we're sort of starting to see the disintegration of it. In the decline, I mean, the Washington Post doesn't have Book World anymore. The New York Times Book Review, page counts are down. And basically everybody's thrown themselves off a cliff. And I've been in Eeyore about this for a number of years, and I was thinking, as I was thinking I was going to come to this panel, it's like, am I really going to be this total downer when there's a lot of successful things to talk about, and so I'm not going to be a total downer. But I do think that we're in a state of flux, and so the way to understand that state of flux is as an opportunity to find new ways to talk about books and to find new audiences for them. And a lot of those are online, and but you can't ignore the sort of mass media people too.
Good. Thank you. I've been curious about, with several of you, and I think at least two of you can address this. What have been the roles of university presses and small presses in bringing your work into the world? And I'm going to start with Lily, because Lily has an unusual perspective because she's published by a small press, and she is an editor at one small press and an associate editor at another small press. Could you tell us a little bit about the world of small presses right now and how your work fits into that?
Sure. I think the small press publishing world is really very exciting right now. To me, small presses offer this other model for writing, often publishing works that are challenging and question what narrative is and what narrative can do. And I think that that's very important. And a lot of, well, that's about it. But as an editor, it's exciting to read manuscripts, and it's exciting to see these works that would probably get rejected from New York presses, and give them an opportunity, because really, and Brendan and I were talking about this earlier, right? To edit and to be a publisher is to love books, whether it's a small press or, what was the word you used?
Traditional.
Traditional press. And these books that small presses publish, there's so much care put into them. Even though it's often on a shoestring budget and there's 1 or 2 people running an entire show. And I think that that's just a different model that is provocative and really exciting.
Juan, you've had some small press publications. How have they influenced your work? How many? 26? 20? How many? They've had an influence. And you've spoken of some of your champions tonight who are publishers of small presses. Where does it stand now? The small press world and the university press world. Is it more important?
Well, I think small presses are gaining ground, and inventing presses is inventing ways of speaking and crossing over into ways of speaking, new ways of speaking, and new voices emerging with much more potency, and also the literary centers crossing over. So there's a lot of crossover. That's why we're here tonight. And not only in terms of narrative, as Lee was saying, in terms of the institutions as well, in terms of the literary culture, as we know, and the internet, in terms of, you know, Oprah's power. Right. So literature is becoming more democratic, and so the small press has always been that democratic force since the very beginning. Chapbooks and mimeographs and self-made books with all those beautiful beads on them and self-painted covers. Oh man, I love those. I could eat them. So that's been amazing.
And your current book is a university press book.
Yes.
What's going on with them?
Well, what's happening with the university presses, just a kind of an objective look, is that they're beginning to sense the shift that has been spoken about of not new voices, but they're called new voices, right? Our voices have always been here. All of our voices in the audience and our voices up here in the middle and on the outside, on the inside, we've always been here. The universities are becoming more aware of that, as you know. So in many cases, the universities are creating book lists and imprints within the university press. So there's sub-tracks for Native American books in the University of Arizona Press, and most of the university presses have these imprints. And that's good. You know, that's good for all of us. And you know, gay literature is blossoming in university presses, and young adult literature is blossoming. And you know, Allison Day is here from HarperCollins that I work with, and she just says, just come on out and write what you want to write. You know, just come on, write what you want to write. Okay, really? So I send what I want to write, and that's amazing, the response that Allison has given me. So a lot of shift, a lot of experimentation, a lot of migration, and a lot of crossover, and a lot of hybridity, and borderlands. The border is being erased. Borders are being erased.
What about in terms of the awards that are available and the awards that you're currently experiencing, this wonderful event in the evening of honoring your work? What kind of influence do you think it will have on your future?
Big.
Big, to start? Big?
I'm very grateful to Oprah. I think when I go to Brendan next time, he'll take me seriously.
We did not reject.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, how do I begin the second book? You know, where do I begin? You know, you work so hard, you pray hard, you dream. The book comes together, you know, oh God, if only I could write a book, life would be sweet. Then you write a book, you're like, how do I write a second book? So, for me, you know, when I was nominated for the Kane Prize, is a prize for writing in Africa. That was actually the first time many people heard about me in Africa. I had published twice in the New Yorker here. In many places on my continent, you say the New Yorker, they say, is it the New York Times you're talking about? So, what's the New Yorker? Those people say, what's the New Yorker? So it was that nomination, the Kane Prize nomination, that got me on the BBC, and people started hearing Uwem Akpan, and now winning the Commonwealth Prize in the Africa region this year. It really helped my standing too in Africa. Many people got to hear, because my book is not yet published in Nigeria. It's in South Africa, published by Penguin. But that will change very soon. So these awards have helped me a lot. Though I never struggled to find a publisher, courtesy of the New Yorker.
Now there's a sense of even more so that nobody, maybe they can still reject you, but I think Oprah has really blessed me. That's what I can say.
Lily? Your first book won an award, and now you have another book with a Pan Beyond Margins award. What kind of influence will that have in your future?
I have no idea. What I can say though is that winning this award has meant a lot for the press, for Fairy Tale Review Press, because it is such a small press. It was a print run of, I think, 500, and so to get this kind of award was huge for the press. And for me personally, I don't think that my writing has changed. I'm still publishing books with small presses. Of course, you know, if Brendan offers to publish my next book, I won't say no, but yeah.
Good.
Brendan, we're just giving you tons of offers.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
We have just a few more minutes, but I'm going to ask Juan to also respond to that question about the influence of awards on your work and your future.
Yeah, it's always a tough question, isn't it, about the awards? I want to mention a little bit about Isaac Rosenfeld, the great Jewish critic of the mid-20th century. He has a great essay called The Situation of the Jewish Writer. And in that essay, he mentions this turning point, which he was, I guess, sensing. And he says, the outsider is the perfect insider. It kind of hit me because it made a lot of sense to me. That there's a turning point in our lives. Writing from the margin, and an award is that turning point. We become insiders, but we're actually outsiders. So we become the perfect insiders, and we can see things in some new, wild, strange, clear, weird, diamond-shaped way. So that's one piece. The second piece is that I just was invited to a literacy first time ever festival in the Coachella Valley, city of Coachella, farm worker town, hard town. It's like Juan Rulfo lives there. You know, it's a hard town. All the resources have been siphoned out.
Is that in America or in Mexico?
Coachella in the Inland Empire, what's called the Inland Empire in Southern California, and it's just like an hour south of Palm Springs. And the children came up, you know, and the families were there, and it was free pan dulce. And I met the grandfather, farm worker still, like my father. And I could tell, they were wearing sombreros, and I could tell by their faces and their voices that they had a very hard life, and they brought their family. And I met a 16-year-old who came up to me with my children's book, The Upside Down Boy, which Barbara Zane Krieger here in town, from Making Books Sing, turned into a musical for young audiences in 2004, Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. And this 15-year-old girl came up to me, and she had the book up to her, above her nose, under her eyes. And I was sitting down looking up at her, and she burst into tears. I just stood there, and she says, I'm so thankful that you wrote this book, because that's my story. I couldn't speak English when I first came to school. You know, and this was the moment for her to tell me that with this book. So this award allows me to represent those people, those children, those families, and give it to them, give the award to them, and it's a big impact in their lives. So they can pick up books, so they can tell their stories, so that desert will become a little greener in their lives, So there's more books in the library that's still standing, and the librarian will talk about it, and the mothers will share it in their way, and the children will write their books.
It's a great way to end. The outsider becomes the perfect insider and then reaches back to tell the stories of those who have no voice at the moment but may in the future. Wonderful. Thank you all. This has been so great. I think we have time for a couple questions. If there's anyone in the audience who has a question that we haven't seen covered this evening. Yes.
Okay, for Lily. Okay, you weren't sure how the prize will affect things,
Yes.
but will the prize make for a larger press run the next time out?
Yeah, this book, because of the award, just had its second print run. Although I don't think that it was any larger of a print run.
Second small print run. Anyone else?
I've heard two contexts that interest me very much as it relates to the publishing industry. One of which, as off the cuff as it might have sounded, was this idea that, you know, it's basically suburban white folks who are, you know, running the show, and then the other context is that major publishers and such are creating imprints. University publishers are creating imprints for the literature of, say, you know, Latinos or African American or whoever. And I wonder how much those institutions are working in addition to those kinds of things, but also to bring in editors, prize award winners, folks on the inside to make it less of the suburban white folk, but also folks who are African American or Latino or Native American or whatever into the circles themselves to make these decisions and to make literature, you know, why not have Latinos on the university press with the imprint that says university press on it?
Answer? Yeah.
It's for everybody.
I think the first thing I would say is that publishing is a career that people choose. So you have to be aware that you could possibly be in publishing and that there are such things as editors. And that awareness is sometimes difficult to come by. I mean, I, in a weird way, am a minority because I didn't go to an Ivy League school, oddly enough. So the tiering of what it means to be an outsider in this industry is traditionally, I mean, most of the people went to an Ivy League school. They went to Yale or Harvard or Amherst or Princeton or something like that. And they're incredibly smart and they're incredibly diligent, and many of them study and are invested in minority issues. This is not to say that they are in any way not broad people, but I do think that there's just a certain ignorance, not ignorance, but I want to say lack of knowledge that this is even a possibility for people to do this thing, to acquire books and to publish them. I certainly didn't know about it when I was in college. You know. I just got curious about it. And so the other thing that I would say is that it's a clubby business, and you know, it's a really clubby business. And so white folks tend to hire white folks, unfortunately, and they also tend to hire people that, you know, went to a school like theirs. And I think that that's who they're looking for. And I also think that the way into it, the way into the club is through this accreditation process, the accumulation of these various things. And the only way to crack it is to get an internship, really, especially on the trade side. And the only way to get an internship is to be willing to work for no pay.
Right.
So you tell me who's going to get those internships.
Well, I guess the question there then would be, and it's maybe a bigger question and you guys have time to answer, but why have a club?
Traditionally, before the Germans bought everybody, American publishing houses were run by dudes that like to come in at 10 o'clock, they like to leave at 4, and they like to go out to their country estates and ride horses on the weekends. That was American publishing. So in a certain way, it's a lot better than it was. But it's a traditionally sort of genteel business. People are interested in the arts and interested in promoting the arts, and it's not a terribly lucrative business. So you also have people who may have some means and want to devote themselves to it. So I think there's a lot of sort of socioeconomic factors that and historical factors that contributed to the makeup of publishing right now. But I actually think that in the last 10 to 15, 20 years, there's been a great flowering, in part because of small presses, and in part because people just got a lot more open-minded about what people want to read.
Any comments on the small press piece? I see another question here, and then I see a question here, and I see a question there. 1, 2, 3.
I'd be interested in how much response you get online and how much responsibility you take to people who start to email you, or there's a Facebook discussion page or Twitter, and you think that's in any way your responsibility to develop the audience, locate the book, put it in a cultural context, and how international is that response to some of your books? You know, like, I just interviewed a Vietnamese boy this morning who would never think, you know, to run down a Vietnamese author, and I could locate some for him, but he's online. He's much swifter online. As soon as I put him on my computer, he's there. So if I could give him your address, Lily, or Uwem, or Juan Felipe, he'd be there. But how much do you get back? And if you're not computer literate, maybe that isn't your responsibility. Can you comment on that?
All right, any of you involved in online social networking that's going to get the word out about your books?
I should say that we invite authors to do this stuff, but I think that all authors are, in like their books, unique. So we've actually been trying to develop something in Norton where we do sort of like one of those Cosmo quizzes, where it's sort of like what are the qualities in a writer that will lend themselves to a web presence? Like maybe they'll have a website, or maybe they're better for Twitter, or maybe they're better for Facebook. But it's not something where you want to be on all media all the time. Because
Right.
some writers are solitary and it's not like that. But
Yeah. Well, I think, John, you're touching the nerve, because when our brother was asking about the imprints in the university presses, those imprints the people crossing over from the outside coming into the inside are outside the university presses and making noise there. For example, this has to do with John's question. For example, Adriana Dominguez, who now has her own website, and she's calling daily for Latino writers to submit manuscripts. But she's not in a university press. She's online. And Marcela Landres, who's another New York former agent, is now online and has developed, as you know, Latinidad, that you can find out about books and interviews with publishers and agents. So, John, you're pointing to the issue. It's kind of decentralized, and it's coming at us really fast. Agents are online, and the new imprints are online, and Lily's work is up there, bouncing around, and Uwem's stuff is up there too. And we're getting feedback and requests and emails, and so it's everywhere. And but I haven't thought about shaping myself online, like, oh, here I am. I haven't thought about that. You know, that's okay. Coming up.
Yeah, I have a website, and my agent's contact and my publicist's contact are there. And if someone writes in to say, thank you, Uwem, I really enjoyed your work, I write back to say thank you too. I try to really do that. The problem I have is the people who write to say they send you an attachment of a manuscript.
You want a blurb?
Then it's like more, more work. But sometimes, people have been known to, to say, oh, thank you for writing about this. Why don't you write about this other thing in my country? You're going around Africa doing this thing. There's this issue in my country. Write about it. And I would like really to say to that person, you go write about it. But I just so.
All right, I saw two more questions. Woman sitting next to my husband. You, and a man on the aisle. You'll be next. So, yeah.
You touched on the question that I had. I wanted to ask each of you writers to just talk about your most interesting interactions with readers, people who've read your books. What's been interesting or surprising to you?
You want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I have to think about it.
For me, as soon as I started publishing in the New Yorker, and then people would come up to say something, I started learning to just listen and be neutral, because someone can come and like this terrible character in your work. That's the one that touches the person. And this person is ready to take you to the Supreme Court and say, this is the character I relate with. There's nothing you can do about it. So there's no point me trying to say, you see, this is the... And one lady in Milwaukee, one old lady came to me and said, look, Father, I really sympathize with this dad who sleeps all day, who is the pickpocket while the daughter is prostituting to bring money to the family. This man drinks all day, he's just lying there. That's my character. So I started, this was at the beginning, I started arguing with her. What about the girl who is selling herself? What about the mother who, and the other sister who is going to become a prostitute very soon? What about the boy, who is stuck in this family? He said, let me tell you, young man, it is this man. So I backed off. At the end of the conversation, she started saying, well, my dad was a drunk. I could feel the powerlessness of him being in the house and not having control over the family, and yet still trying to exert his authority. So I have learned, you say this is your character, I say, yeah, that's the character. You say you like this dweeb, I like that dweeb too. After all, I created the dweeb.
Really, you want to answer that?
Yes. My most interesting is that I Googled myself regularly, and I found a high school student who had a YouTube video up of her favorite books. And so she started with Anne Rice and, Interview with the Vampire or something like that. And she was saying how great this book is and how this book just changed her life. And then the Anne of Green Gables continuation was her second book. And she said, and then she said, and this is how thick the book is. And to her friends, and somewhere along the line she gets text messages and she has to stop and says, hold on, I just got a text message. I have band practice in the morning. And then the last book, she reaches out and pulls up my book. I have no idea how she's found this book. And she says, and then there's this book by Lily Hoang, and it's really weird. Like, you have to read it in this weird way, and it's got all of this weird stuff in it, but it's like really deep.
That's a good thing.
And then she said, and the good thing is that it's really thin. Unlike Anne Rice. She said, but it's taken me longer to read this book than it takes me to read Anne Rice. That's really fantastic. And
that's a compliment.
And so I wish that I had written back to her, but the YouTube video is still up if anyone wants to look it up. But actually, I was going to respond to the web presence earlier. I blog, and so you can find me. You can Google me. I also have am involved in a group blog about writing and publishing and what have you called Big Other. So I just thought I would give John that little shout out.
Excellent. Great. And we have a final question for the night.
We just got through Thanksgiving around here, and some people were talking about the Louisiana Purchase, and then the land that was taken from Mexico. And I always think of that in terms of Aslan. And I never hear enough about Aslan, so I know not a lot of times, but Juan, could you expound a little bit on Aslan, please?
That was a very interesting moment. My roommate, one of my roommates back in San Diego in the late 60s, actually we were roommates in 62, Alberto Rista, Chicano poet. Well, it was a moment when he said, you know, I'm becoming a Chicano right now. And you know how it is. We choose to become. And in the mid-60s, he became Chicano, no longer Mexican-American. And he was very serious. So, and of course, we were listening to Malcolm X, we were listening to Martin Luther King, to Cesar Chavez, to Angela Davis, and to to reclaiming our identities with our brothers and sisters around the world. Things were happening here in New York. The gay movement, the lesbian movement, the women's movement. So Aslan was that homeland that we discovered, that Urista discovered, in the middle of some anthropological book by Mesoamerica, of this northern space where the originators of where the Aztecs came from, migrated south to found what is now Mexico City, and then Mesoamerica and on. And we were looking for a homeland. And Urista was the one who picked up the term Aslan, which was this homeland, which is he positioned in what's called the Southwest, what we call the Southwest. So then we all began to write poetry in that manner, just like, let's see, Rancarenga in the late 60s began to re-examine African-based metaphysical terms and languages in Swahili, and discovering terms like Kwanzaa, and then reaffirming those terms and recreating those terms. So Aslan was that. And so a lot of poetry emerged from that, and we got into it and created long ceremonial things, and we took over buildings and in San Diego, throughout the Southwest, little tiny islands between highways, underneath the freeways. This is Cesar Chavez Parque, in the name of Aslan. It was just a little piece of turf, you know, with a little sign that said Santana or something. But we would take it over, or a whole park, or a whole building, and either get jailed or picked up or arrested. Okay, you can have it. Just a bunch of bicycles in there anyway. Hey, Joseph, let's pull out the bicycles. You know, they want this. You know, they want to burn up the whole Balboa Park down here. So it wasn't the name of Aslan, of our homeland, because we had been seen as illegals and aliens. I used to fill out my mother's alien registration form way back. I used to interpret at the welfare office for my family, for my mom and myself, you know, and for my father. So this was very deep for us. So the Aslan movement kind of flourished. And there's pharmacies called Aslan Pharmacy, Aslan Taqueria, and Aslan Tire Service. It really took off, and Aslan Tattoos, and the new generation is really mad about it, really into it. Like all the Mecha, Latino organizations on campus, Aslan, and the new MFA grants, you know. So what are you writing there? Oh, and the women were going to say, you know, we're writing a treatise on a series of narrative poems on Koyoshoki, on the application of the moon goddess and how she functions in against patriarchy. Oh, that's very good. That's very good. So it's kind of it is out there. Let me tell you. And it has changed its face and forms. It's being reinvented. What we called Aslan in '68, it is kind of gone. And those structures are still around. But they kind of, you know, you've all seen the Aztec calendar, mural. Well, that's an Aslan outcome. You've all been to East LA, seen the hundreds of murals. That's an Aslan outcome. You've all seen the tattoos and the calendars and the poems. That's an Aslan, Chicano movement, Latino movement outcome. And it's still happening.
2012.
2012. And in a way, Roberto Bolaños is a whole new face of that when he talks about Juarez. It's an Aslan site, and the women and the murders and talking about that and not hiding it anymore and bringing it out. And of course, it received the NBCC award. So we're looking at it with different eyes, and it's coming from different parts of the world, in this case from Chile. So it's kind of moving around, and it has changed its name. And they're even selling T-shirts, Aslan T-shirts in Aslan, Nayarit. I go, wait a minute, it was actually Nayarit. We had it wrong. We were too far up north. It wasn't San Diego, it was Nayarit. It's everywhere.
Thank you. Can we have another round of applause? There are books available for signing. There are books available for signing. Housing Works, Pan American Center, the wonderful sponsor of the Pan Beyond Margins Awards.